Over the last few weeks, Bitcoin has been pumping, but altcoins have still been lagging. So a lot of people have been asking me, Miles, when is the right time to rotate into altcoins? When are altcoins finally going to get their day in the sun and finally perform as strongly as Bitcoin? So in today's show, I'm going to be giving you my 5 steps in order to be able to identify when altcoins are about to pump, and when you identify that, which altcoins are best to get into. I've got a 5-step game plan to share with you, which should hopefully give you the blueprint to be able to find altcoin pumps. It involves analyzing the open interest, analyzing BTC pairs and cross-referencing, as well as looking at an indicator that I like to use in order to verify altcoin pump. So it's going to be a very important video because obviously it is the question on a lot of people's lips right now. What do we do with alts? Because Bitcoin has been ripping, and although some alts are performing well, for example, today even ADA and XRP are pumping, by and large, alts have been laggards behind Bitcoin. It is Bitcoin's time to shine. So welcome everyone to today's show. Thank you for being here. I was a little bit late, but that's because I was preparing what I think is going to be a really, really awesome show for you guys. Elizabeth, welcome. George, we've got James in the house. We've got Tommy. We've got Crimson. Everyone's in the house. We've got Dave Digital here as well. Let's get started. Let's get straight into it. So before I give you my 5-step plan for buying altcoins, the first thing I want to go over is Bitcoin and what we are facing this week. It is a huge week for cryptocurrency because we have the FOMC tomorrow. So in roughly, I think 14 hours time from the time you're watching this video, if you're watching it live, there is going to be an FOMC meeting, which is going to dictate the next rate hike. That is what everyone's waiting for. But Bitcoin, in the face of FOMC, has been holding up quite strongly. We've seen a little bit of volatility around the 28K region, but since we broke through range high, it has been performing very strongly, and it is now consolidating above the 27.7 level. That is a very important level for Bitcoin to consolidate above. If you started to see some sort of breakdown below this, and then a bearish retest, that's a strong indicator to me we're going down to 26.5. That could still happen if FOMC is bad, but I'm more talking pre-FOMC. It's good that we have some consolidation. On the macro, if we zoom out a little bit, let's say we go onto the weekly chart, Bitcoin is still facing what I think is pretty damn strong resistance between 28.9 to 31K. This is going to be a very difficult zone for the bulls to break through. Now, of course, if you get a no BPS rate hike tomorrow, then you're probably going to get a massive explosion, and there's a good chance we can shoot through this zone. But if we do get a hike, which is the expectation of 25 bips, then it is likely that this zone will act as resistance, and Bitcoin will have to make a decision. I don't think it's going to be a quick move if it's 25 bips. I think there's a chance we just consolidate in this range, maybe get rejected, consolidate above 26.5. Who knows? It really depends on FOMC. I'm hesitant to make a prediction based on FOMC because I don't really know. And Bitcoin, for me right now, I'm not trading. And I think it's okay to accept sometimes that we don't always have to be in a trade in this market. Sometimes we can just sit back and wait for more information to make better trades. That's on the Bitcoin front. On the altcoin front, I am a lot more active. I have my watch list prepared. I have my buy levels prepared, and I'm going to be sharing that with you in today's show, of course, when I give you my 5-step plan. And I'm much more preparing on that front because alts, they usually give us the better trade setups percentage-wise. For example, if Bitcoin gets rejected after a bad FOMC, then likely altcoins are going to detract more, and then those will be the better shorts. Whereas if Bitcoin starts pumping, consolidates, then we could see a rotation, and if a few signals line up that I want to see, then altcoins could be better to get into in terms of longs. But in general, right now, the longing Bitcoin has been better than alts, obviously, because ETH BTC has been dropping versus the Bitcoin pair, and you could say the same thing for many alts. Although we did get a slight bounce today, the general trend has been pretty consistent that Bitcoin's been dominating. So why is Bitcoin been dominating? Well, it's running off this flight to safety digital gold narrative. Essentially, what you've seen is the Fed completely switch up their strategy because the banks were collapsing. So they needed to basically print more money. And their balance sheet increased by the largest amount it's increased since the 2021 or 2020 pandemic. And what we've seen is a huge spike in the Fed's balance sheet assets. And we can see that here, that they actually removed 6 months worth of QT basically in a day, which is pretty crazy, or at least half, the QT that's occurred over the last 6 months in a single day, which is, it's a huge spike, and it's a huge shift in the Fed's approach. And although it isn't technically quantitative easing, because that involves buying bonds and securities, technically it's like kind of like a unspoken form of QE. So they're not going to come out and say it's QE, but in a roundabout way, it can achieve the same effect. You are essentially printing more money, putting more money into the economy. In a very oversimplified way, that's what's happened. And we've seen US dollar liquidity actually spiking to levels not seen since April 2022. So this cash injection has become evident, and it's kind of caused a lot of fears globally of hyperinflation. We saw the 𝗵𝗆𝗍𝗍 bet that got this hyper-Bitcoinization narrative back into the media. Bitcoin's been pumping off the back of that. Bitcoin's also been pumping because there is a lot of fears of global banking contagion, as well as a potential financial collapse. We're hearing a lot of this recession talk, and obviously Bitcoin has been acting as a bit of a digital gold in the face of all that. Probably explains why the altcoins haven't really run yet, because this narrative is very, very driven by Bitcoin and very driven by the flight to safety narrative. And that's why alts haven't seen the rotation, because they are being treated more like risk assets, whereas Bitcoin, it has had a decoupling versus the NASDAQ. It has had a decoupling versus even the DXY. We saw, the DXY dropping and Bitcoin dropping, DXY pumping, Bitcoin pumping. It's not really following anything right now. It's kind of going on its own path. We actually did see a slight bounce in stocks yesterday, but Bitcoin was pretty much stagnant. So it's on its own path at the moment. Altcoins following those risk assets a little bit more than Bitcoin, but for now, I mean, it's very hard to compare. Another interesting thing about the Bitcoin rally is that it's been mostly spot driven. So this isn't a leverage driven pump. Now, from the bullish perspective, the fact it has been a spot driven pump is a great thing, because it means that there is still room for the market to move to the upside once you get retail starting to FOMO in. The other thing that the spot driven pump tells me is that a lot of people are buying Bitcoin just to store it. A lot of people will just be buying Bitcoin as kind of your flight to safety digital gold asset. They just want to hold Bitcoin, and they're not really looking to trade it. So I think there's been a lot of buyers. Potentially, we're going to see some institutional buyers come out and announce that they maybe added Bitcoin to their balance sheet or their holdings, or trust funds and super funds and this kind of thing, adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets. Or it also could be retail driven, but retail spot driven, not retail leverage driven. Typically what we see during hype cycles, crazy bull markets, is the leverage ratio, so the open interest, really ticking up. That's not really something we've seen yet. We had a slight uptick yesterday if we look at the open interest, but technically the majority of this run has been driven by spot buyers. So that's another important distinction to make. The other thing is, open interest is still low. Funding rates in 3-month futures has basically been muted, and divergence has opened up between spot and perp contract for differences, kind of indicating to me that the leverage isn't as high as we've previously seen during massive Bitcoin rallies. So that kind of sets the scene for why Bitcoin's been running. It sets the scene for why altcoins haven't been running as strongly. What can we look forward to, or look forward to dreading this week? Because it really depends on how the data comes out. Well, in 14 hours, and maybe by the time you're watching this video, the data's already out, but very soon we are getting this FOMC interest rate meeting, where we're finally going to get clarity over the rate hike. And to me, this is actually the most monumental FOMC meeting I think we've had in months, potentially even years. Why? Because this is really the decisive point for the Fed to make a decision as to whether it wants to stick to its guns, stick to its strategy, which has been, we're fighting inflation, higher for longer. And, if it's going to stay true to that path that it set out on last year, or is it going to buckle under pressure, buckle under the fears of a banking contagion and a banking collapse? We've seen Silvergate, we've seen Silicon Valley, we've seen First Republic, we've seen Credit Suisse. Are they going to buckle under pressure and not hike rates? Or are they going to, as I said before, stick to their path? The market is suggesting that they're going to stick to their path. An 88.6% chance that we get a 25 bips hike. An 11.4% chance that we don't get a rate hike. Now, I think the obvious answer to how the market can respond is, look, if we don't get a rate hike, the market is probably going to pump, because I think 25 BPS, by and large, is priced in. This is what we're seeing by the probabilities. So if you don't get a rate hike, Bitcoin, for me, explodes into this blue box, and how it reacts to this blue box will be quite important. It could shoot through and then retest, and then that would be a bullish retest for us to look up to continuation to 35 to 40. That could be a huge explosion. Or we could have, a test of this box and start consolidating. That could also give altcoins a bit of license to run once we see Bitcoin consolidate. It would be very bullish for markets. But unfortunately, I don't think that's what's going to happen. We have to play the probabilities, and sitting back as investors, we can't make absolute calls. We have to say, look, this is what the market's telling us. Let's kind of price in what the market's saying, and what it's saying is probably going to get a 25 bips hike. So if we look across all the major predictions from the major banks, from the major funds, the majority of them are predicting 25 bips. Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Bloomberg. You have a few outliers like Barclays and Goldman Sachs saying they're not going to hike rates. You've even got Elon Musk starting to call for rate cuts. This is based on the premise that since inflation is a lagging indicator, the full extent of the interest rate hikes haven't been fully felt in terms of the general market. And that's why the banks have been breaking, because the Fed has been hiking too much and maybe they need to start pulling back. I think there's a genuine case for them pausing rates, by the way, but I just don't think they'll do it. So whether there is a case for them to do it and whether they'll do it are two very different things. So let's just assume it's going to be 25 bips. What happens if it's 25 basis points? Well, it's not a doomsday scenario for markets at all because the markets are pricing it in. I think it's pretty neutral, actually. I think the market probably moves sideways. We probably see volatility. It's going to be hard to trade. It's all going to depend on what Jerome Powell says, whatever he says in terms of the tone he uses and the way it's conducted. That's probably going to spook the markets if it's overly hawkish, probably going to pump the markets if it's overly dovish. The dot plot as well, super important. So you'll see the pace of expected rate hikes / cuts throughout the remainder of 2023 and 2024. That is going to be a very key data set that we get during FOMC. The market, in the case of a 25 basis point rate hike, may pay more attention to that dot plot than what Jerome Powell says himself. So just keep that in mind. Because what Jerome Powell says oftentimes is, well, it doesn't end up playing out. Like basically I don't know if they've been purposefully lying. If they weren't lying, they've been extremely negligent for the last 3 years. Basically saying, the banking system's stable, a soft landing's possible, disinflation's begun, inflation won't be a problem. They said inflation was transitory in 2021. Anything he says, don't really pay attention to it. Just pay attention to whether it's hawkish or dovish, because that's how the markets are going to move. So in terms of trading pre-FOMC, I might take a few trades based on alt setups that I like, but I'm not going in with heavy size, right? I'm going to wait for FOMC in terms of immediate trading over the next 24 hours, wait for the data. If obviously it's 0 BPS, then I'll look to long alts, of course. And if we do get a 25 bip hike, I'll kind of assess the tonality and the dot plot and all that sort of stuff as that happens. Ted says there's a lot of room for the market to reprice if the Fed come in hawkish on Wednesday. There's this kind of not likely yet possible. I don't even really want to talk about it too much because it's probably not going to happen, but there's a chance they hike 50 bips. I don't think they do. I'm 99.999% sure they don't, but just kind of keep in mind that if they do go 50 basis points, the market is going to freaking tank. So just keep that in mind. Even if they do go 25 basis points and let's say the dot plot is slightly more hawkish than expectations, the speech is slightly more hawkish than expectations, the market definitely could have a slight retracement. I'm not denying that. We are heading into resistance on, some of the higher timeframes, especially. You could even draw this in. I personally think the major resistance is 28.5, but Ted drew it in slightly lower at this first wick down. It all depends on how you want to draw it. If you draw it like that, then we are at resistance. But however you draw it doesn't really matter. The key fact is we are at resistance, right? So when you're at resistance and if we get a bad FOMC, then obviously there's going to be some sort of pullback. So what are the pullback levels we can look at if that is the scenario? Well, you've got this first level that I don't think is going to hold, but that's the first level you want to hold for bullish continuation. That's 27.7. And then this next level probably I think is where we're going to see a lot of buyers, and that is at 26.5. So a retracement to 26.5 would be that logical place to come. If you come all the way back down to range highs, I think that's a great long zone. That would be a full retracement of this latest move, but it would still be structurally intact for a pump. So those are probably your two targets, 26.5, and then 25 is the lower target. You could probably average in, see how price reacts at 26.5, cut stops below if you're trading on leverage, and then look to re-enter at range highs. That's probably the plan that I'll follow if FOMC is a little bit bearish. But obviously, if it's 50 bips, then just throw this plan out the window. The market's going to tank. But I really don't think that happens. So that's kind of how I'm viewing FOMC. I mean, now let's get into altcoin talk, because at the end of the day, we can't control FOMC. I'm just giving you some scenarios for what I think can happen to make you aware that in 12 hours, or 14 hours, there's going to be a big move. And however that move takes us, I think, we got to be prepared either way to trade it. And I think the best way to trade it, especially if it's bullish or the market reacts strongly, is going to be through altcoins. So I want to give you my 5-step altcoin plan to get into alts, because that is really the question here. With Bitcoin pumping, with a lot of liquidity coming back into the crypto market, let's say FOMC is neutral and we get a resumption of trend, which is probably the most likely scenario at the end of the day, that it is neutral. Then when are we going to see a rotation into alts? So I want to talk about what my buy conditions for alts would be and what I need to see. Before we get into that, just remember, if you do want to trade, you can trade on Apex, trade on a DEX. I actually do have one position open now, a very small position, but I actually got in at 23K, up 223%. But if you want to trade on Apex, it's basically a DEX. It's an Orderbook DEX. They're also Bybit affiliated, so you can access them through the Bybit exchange. You essentially can trade using a MetaMask wallet. They've got 12 trading pairs, Bitcoin, ETH obviously being the main ones. Pretty strong liquidity as well, and it's very fast. It's on L2, so it's on Polygon and Arbitrum as well. If there is Arbitrum incentives, then this could potentially qualify. I don't know whether they've got incentives, but that's just something to mention. Also, they do have a trade to earn program. So they're giving away $10 million over a 52-week period. I think there's still like $5 million left worth of giveaways. So if you open a trade, you can essentially come into the trade to earn section. And the more you trade, the more you're going to earn, and you can stake those rewards. So basically, instead of running a deposit bonus like Bybit or one of those exchanges, they're running trade to earn. So if you're an active trader and you want to trade Bitcoin or ETH, Apex is a good place to do it, in my opinion. And you can do so using the link in the description, of course, and get access to some of those trade to earn rewards. We also do have links to Bybit and BitGet. Bybit, we have a $30,000 sign-up bonus, and BitGet, we get an $8,000 sign-up bonus if you use the links below. But of course, if you want to trade on a DEX, Apex would be the place to do it for leverage. And, it depends. I usually diversify my assets between centralized entities and decentralized entities. Actually, like a hot tip for you guys, split up your portfolio on-chain and off-chain. Have some money on-chain as like your gambling money. Maybe your active trading money, your leverage trading money, however you like to gamble. Some people like small caps, some people like trading. However you do it, have some money on-chain, and then have your safer funds off-chain or on a centralized exchange, or obviously, in your bank account, however you want to store it off-chain. Because what you'll be able to do then is, whenever you make profits on-chain, you can scrape profits and put it off-chain. So you can get a nice system going where you're kind of mentally separated, because you've got your savings off-chain, but you've got your risk portfolio on-chain. So I've actually been doing this. I've been recently consolidating my portfolio. I had like 20 or 30 wallets, so it was absolutely insane. I've been consolidating them, basically selling off assets, basically selling all my assets on-chain and getting into cash. The reason I'm doing that is not so I can get out of the market. Don't think I'm selling for good. The reason I've been doing that on-chain is so I can readjust, because things just got a bit messy, and I'm readjusting all of my weightings. Basically, I only want to be in strength these days. There's a lot of projects I hold that are kind of doing nothing. So I just decided to consolidate a lot of the riskier stuff and like get more active into like the on-chain narrative stuff, because I was doing it but with not enough capital, not enough size. So now I can increase size. And if I follow the 5-step plan that I'm about to outline for you guys, then I think, especially combining that with on-chain narratives, there's a lot of money to be made. Because the thing about narrative trading is there's kind of 2 steps. You want to identify the narrative itself, so the storyline, the crux of it. Is it getting people's mind share? Is it getting attention? Why is it running? What are the catalysts? Once you identify the narrative, then you pair it with PA. You pair it with price action. And if you're seeing the chart starting to reflect your thesis and those 2 things merge, then that's a perfect setup for you to open a trade, or a perfect setup for you to enter a position across one or many alts under that, basket, under that narrative. So that's what I've been doing on-chain. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So that's kind of why I also incorporate DEXs. That's why I use the Apex example, because now that I'm on-chain, I have a lot of assets to trade on-chain, and like I'm basically Apex is the place I'll do Bitcoin, ETH, and some of the major alts, and then I'll use something like a games network on-chain for some of the riskier alts, Arbitrum when it launches, etc. Sorry, because Arbitrum when it launches, it's going to probably be on the Arbitrum DEXs like GMX and GNS. They probably get listings, And when they get listings, then because they're Oracle based, they can just import data. When they get listings, then I think, that's going to be a decent place to trade them because they probably won't be on other exchanges. All right, let's get into the fun of the video, what you guys clicked on the video for. Although, I hope the previous information has been helpful still. And that is, what are my 5 conditions to buy alts? There's actually 6. I have a bonus one. It's more of a speculative one, but it's still valid. So it's actually 6. So Bitcoin's been pumping. That's clear. Altcoins have been lagging. That's clear. Although I'm in alts long term, I'm not heavily in alts short to medium term. Why is that? Because we haven't really seen significant strength from my number 1 indicator, which is ETH BTC. So Ethereum being the leader of the alts, being the biggest altcoin, if you want to still call it an altcoin, I guess, it really does dictate market movement and market sentiment in general for altcoins. So I just want to actually get this flow of funds graph up. You've probably seen it a million times, but I think it's very relevant. I think, where can I get it? Be on my Twitter. This one. So what usually happens is Bitcoin pumps first. That's exactly what we've seen. Then you kind of get this overlap phase where money flows into Ethereum. It struggles to keep up with Bitcoin. Ethereum goes back and forth with Bitcoin and starts outperforming it. And then you see phase 2 kick in, which is when Ethereum starts running super hard. And then you obviously see diversification down to large caps. Now, this graph, the caveat to it is it was made to exemplify like a cycle, the full cycle. So what we saw in 2021, 2017, and 2013. Mostly 2017 and 2021, though, because there wasn't really altcoins in 2013. So this is the example that you could use for a big bull market. But what started to happen is we see this flow of funds on a smaller scale. So we still see alts following this ladder of Bitcoin, ETH, large caps, alts. But what happens is it happens on a much more condensed time frame. So you can really apply this logic to a 3-week period just as you'd apply it to a 3-year period. So although it does apply to a big bull run, it can also apply to what's happening right now with Bitcoin leading the pump. Why does the flow of funds work like this? That's the next question. That is because a lot of people that are buying Bitcoin, just think about it from a retail perspective, they buy it on exchanges. And on exchanges, you have, a lot of other options. You have alt pairs. You have, the ability to trade that Bitcoin into other alts. Now, what does psychology tell retail when their Bitcoin bags pump? They get greedy. And when Bitcoin pumps, they start realizing, oh my God, I can make money in crypto. I've just made a 2x, or I've just made, 20%. I'm sure there's more opportunities. Or, oh my God, Ethereum's pumping. That's going to do what Bitcoin did. So people tend to take profits from Bitcoin into Ethereum and other altcoins. It's just kind of like the natural progression of degening and gambling. I mean, last bull run, just think about yourself. How many times did you rotate profits from a large cap into a mid and small cap? I know I did it many times because we get greedy. And to be honest, greed in a bull run does work a lot of the time, as long as you're not playing hot potato at the end of the bull run, which, unfortunately did happen with a lot of people, including myself with certain positions. But on a smaller time frame, we still see this happening. People playing the rotation game from large to mid to small cap. So that does give you an idea of how money can flow. Now the question is, will this happen? Because this doesn't have to happen. This can be a Bitcoin-led run. This can just be a Bitcoin-led rally. And if that's the case, then this is irrelevant. There's no alt season because it's not a true cycle. So before you subscribe to this chart being 100% correct, you need certain indicators to hit to verify that we are seeing a rotation. So what are those indicators? First one, ETH BTC. For phase 2 to fully kick into gear, you see this overlap phase. What needs to happen is money needs to flow into ETH, but it needs to struggle to keep up with Bitcoin. Is money flowing into ETH? I mean, we did see a little bit of a reversal, which was a great sign. But in general, the trend over the last 6 months has been bearish for ETH versus Bitcoin since the merge. The trend over the last few weeks has been bearish for ETH. To get into alts and get confirmation that this ETH trade is starting to begin, you want to see a break above this key blue level. What's this blue level? It's the first wick down in January 22, acted as support for a massive rally in April, then acted as acted as support, then acted as support again, which broke down during the lunar collapse and the 3AC stuff. Then we saw a pump pre-merge, and then we also saw this general level be another area of support during the FTX saga. So this is a key level for us to flip, for ETH to start exhibiting bullish momentum and indicate to me that we're going to phase 2. We're not quite there yet. That's the first thing I'm looking for. I'm looking for a flip of this level and a push to the upside. I'm looking for a few consecutive daily candles. It's great that we got one bullish daily candle, but I'd like to see 2 or 3 or 4 and a reclamation of this level for me to go, okay, phase 2 is starting. So that's the first thing I want to see. The second indicator that I want to see tick upwards before I go heavier into alts is the altcoin season index starting to tick up. Look, this is a basic index, but what it does is essentially track the momentum of altcoins versus Bitcoin. And usually when we do see altcoin runs, you'll see a spike in the altcoin season index before liquidity filters into smaller mid caps. Not every time, but a lot of the time. So in confluence with ETH BTC and all of these indicators I want to see happen in confluence to get like a really high confirmation entry on alts. I want to see a slight increase in altcoin season. Right now it's basically fully Bitcoin season. It's at 27. Bitcoin season technically is anything below 25. We're still flirting with this Bitcoin season level. I would love to see a consistent hold above the 25 level on the altcoin season index and a push to the upside, maybe 29 or 30. We hover there for a little bit. That gives us indication, all right, altcoin season could be coming back. Because typically when we do start to breach this 30 level, there's huge rallies. You know, we saw it here in 2021. We saw it here again, even in July 22. We saw it again in February. Obviously, July 22, it's kind of different because Bitcoin was losing relative strength because Luna was selling Bitcoin. So that was kind of an anomaly. But even in February, remember when we had that huge pump a couple months ago for alts, look what happened. We saw a huge spike in the altcoin season index. And we had a few days worth of consistent price appreciation in the altcoin index that gave us an indicator to get into alts. And even if you got into alts on February 7th at the very top, you still would have made money because there was still another 2 weeks of profits, right? So you can actually afford to miss the first little rally, but at least wait for a spike in this index to kind of use as a confluence point for ETH BTC. So the third thing I would do is, okay, let's say ETH BTC is looking good. You have a close above this level. You have, an uptick. It's starting to look like money's flowing into ETH. Altcoin season index ticking up as well. Okay, you check those off the list. And then the next thing you want to see is individual alt BTC pairs performing. So I don't want a long weakness. I don't want a long coins that look trash versus BTC. I only want a long coins that are breaking resistances versus BTC. So let me just go through a few and give you examples. Solana BTC, it looks shit. It's been in a downtrend. It's tested this diagonal trend multiple times. It's broken down and down and down. It deviated below its horizontal support. Right now, it looks actually like it wants to break to the downside again. So for Solana to be a good long, in confluence with its USD chart, I would want to see a BTC breakout of this trend. It just needs to start showing a bit of momentum, a break of trend, some sort of momentum shift for me to go, okay, Sol's going to gain strength versus BTC. ADA, for example, you can draw in its resistance at the, I'm just going to say 0.15 level. Obviously, add a few zeros because it's versus BTC, you have to remember. I want to see a reclamation of this level, a test, then a push to the upside. So with every alt, what I would recommend doing is just creating an alt BTC pair watch list on your trading view like I have, and add the altcoins you're looking at and see how they're performing versus Bitcoin. There are outliers, like the Arbitrum coins have been performing very strongly versus Bitcoin. Unfortunately for GMX, although it did perform strongly, you're kind of seeing a bearish formation start to come into play. You probably want to see a reclamation of this level for GMX because that still could be a bearish retest. So you really want like proper higher time frame breakouts on the daily chart for like signals that alts look really, really strong. So you do want confluence with individual alts. They're all looking shit though. I mean, I'm going through them all for you right now and you can see they're all looking horrible. So you do want to start to see them break key levels. Like we can even look at Dogecoin as an example. It just broke below its horizontal. You want to see a reclamation of that level for it to perform. IMX was pumping. It did have a slight downtrend post sell-off. This actually could be a decent one if it starts to consolidate. I'm just going through a few to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Matic BTC looks pretty bad. So you just want to look for the ones with strength versus BTC. So Matic's actually at its last support. We could get a bounce here. So see how it reacts. If it consolidates, you have a nice daily candle, then you can kind of think, okay, maybe Matic's a long versus BTC. But you have to, I'm just giving you examples. You have to wait for strength on the BTC pairs. The next thing you want to do, right? So let's say you found an altcoin that's showing strength on the BTC pair. Let's say, okay, GMX, for example. hypothetically, GMX is showing strength. It just broke above. I like what I'm seeing from GMX. Sol broke momentum all the way up. Sol hasn't broke momentum. I'll show you. So I'll actually use Solana as an example because you just mentioned Solana. So, okay. So we have Solana. Why am I getting 𝗖𝗿𝗍𝗍𝗶? So we have Solana. You kind of see its trend right now. It looks quite bad. This is the Sol Bitcoin chart. So let's say Sol does start to break out, right? Of its Bitcoin pair. The next thing you want to do to enter a trade is work out how it's looking on its dollar pair. So you want to go to your Sol USD chart and work out exactly what we're seeing from Solana. Right now, it's currently rejecting below on the daily. And you're right to make that comment before. It's close to a breakout, but it's not quite there. Of the 200 MA. So we see a wick above, a bearish close below. We are seeing the beginning of a break above this trend. But for me, it's a holistic picture. It's not just like whether we break this blue line. It's whether we actually get above this MA as well on the daily. That's going to be your key indicator to get in. Because we can just shift the drawing a little bit to like touch this wick. And all of a sudden, it's rejecting, right? So the way you draw it's going to affect whether you think it's a breakout. That's why we want multiple confluence points. So we have a higher probability breakout. So you want to see a break of the 200 MA and the diagonal trend as well. And then you also have like this next horizontal key target for Sol. So when you trade altcoins, you don't just want to look at their BTC pairs. You want to look at their USD pairs. And you want to line up altcoins that are strong on their BTC pair, but also strong on their USD pair. That's going to give you ultimate confluence. And of course, those two things only happen once ETH BTC starts to pump and you start to see a tick in the altcoin index. This is less important than ETH. ETH, I think, is more important because it's the leader of the alts. Typically, that's where we see liquidity flow first, and then other alts tend to pump after it. I have a very interesting trend for you now, and this is a bit of hopium because people are going to be like, oh, okay, when's this going to happen? When are we going to get these altcoins starting to break versus BTC? There is a little bit of hopium, and that is the fact that every single time over the last 3 years, Bitcoin dominance has touched 48%. We've seen a rejection and we've seen ETH pump. So look at this. 2021, rejection, Bitcoin dominance 48%, ETH pump. October 2021, rejection, ETH pump. We see here again, June 2022, rejection, ETH pump. March 23, rejection. Does ETH pump? Well, history would suggest it will. The only thing for me is that we need to still see how Bitcoin reacts to this 48 level. It did reject. Does it come back up and then reject again? Or is it just going to be another clean rejection? Let's see. For now, it is rejecting off the 48 level, but this is the key level for Bitcoin. This could like have a strong move as soon as FOMC. So that's the reason why I'm not jumping into alts. One, because a lot of their BTC pairs look shit. Two, because ETH BTC needs that close above this level for me. And three, because FOMC could easily change the dominance factor. So that's why I'm waiting on alts for now. But we are seeing this potential pattern play out. And that's what we've seen time and time again. You can also draw it in as a range. It basically is a complete dominance range we're in right now. Just like we had that 25K Bitcoin range for like months, the exact same thing's happening with dominance. You're in this zone that we're just ranging in. And so far, every time we come up, we get rejected. So that could be an indicator dominance flips back to the altcoins. But what we typically see is it flips back to ETH first and then the alts. So that's why ETH BTC pair plays in. So that's another indicator that I'm looking at. So let's just play the hypothetical. Let's assume ETH BTC reclaims and alts start running a little bit. FOMC is okay, so it's fine. Maybe even bullish. Maybe it's even 0 bips or 25 and dovish sentiment. And the market starts pumping, right? And we start to see a rotation into alts. And these indicators that I've been talking about start to hit. And then we're like, okay, now it's time to buy alts. What alts do you buy? That's the question, right? Well, what I want you to look at is strength. Remember what I said before. Remember how I mentioned to you that when you're trading narratives, you need two things. You need that story, and then you need the price action to validate the story. You want to find coins with both those things. So I can give you a few stories right now. AI is a story. Perp dexes are a story. Arbitrum is a story. ZK is a story. ahead of Polygon EVM, right? They're all stories. You've got staking derivatives, LSDs ahead of Shanghai. That's a story. So those are narratives, right? So the next thing is to pair those narratives, or any, you can think of more as well. There's heaps of things that happen in this market. Heaps of narratives. The narratives all the time. Crypto is driven by narratives. The next thing you want to do is get the price action. So start to chart some of these alts, put them through the process I just went through with their USD trends as well as their BTC trends, and look for the ones that are exhibiting strength. An easy way to find altcoins with strength, and that can also lead you to the narrative because it's reflexive. You can go narrative first, price action second, or you can go price action first, narrative second. Because obviously, a lot of the time, price action leads or indicates that there's a strong narrative going on. So a very simple thing you can do. There's two things I do. First thing is just look at CoinGecko or Coin Bubbles. It's so simple. It sounds too simple, but to be honest, it's great because what you can get is a bit of an indication as to the top altcoins over the last day, over the last week, and look at the ones that have been pumping. CFX pumping on the China narrative. Hex has been strong all year. FTT I'm going to ignore because that's a dead cap bounce. You've got XRP starting to perform strongly. I don't know if it has something to do with Fed now, the payment system. It may, or it may just be because it lagged. Sometimes things don't pump out of narrative. Sometimes they just pump because they're due a pump or a big buyer steps in, right? So you have to kind of look at each coin and work out why. There's not going to be reasons behind every one. Like FTT is probably just a dead cap bounce, but some are going to have reasons. So by looking at the top performers, you can find those reasons and then dig deeper as to, if there's anything there. STX, I like actually as a project. That's been pumping off the back of this Bitcoin L2 narrative. So that's a strong one. It's basically the only Bitcoin L2, by the way. So if you want exposure to Bitcoin DeFi or NFTs or ordinals, you need, STX is one of the only proxy bets. So this is the first thing I do. Look at what's been pumping. Look at CoinGecko as well, because it's going to give you your 7 day as well as your 24-hour volume in more of a graphical layout, whereas this is kind of a bit more ambiguous because you kind of got to flick your eyes around. It's good visually, but maybe not as good for the real diligent investors that just want it listed. So in that case, go into CoinGecko and look at the strongest performers, right? All right. So maybe you've picked a few. You want to look into why they're pumping and what the narrative is. I'm seeing, just off the top of my head, some of these influencer coins, ISO 200022 coins starting to run a bit. Maybe that's because there's like a bit of an ISO resurgence. So that's just a trend that I'm identifying just off the top of my head, looking at XRP, Stellar, and Algo. But, you'll have to dig deeper into whether there's something there. I don't love the ISO narrative, so I'm going to kind of disregard it already. But, a meme coin's starting to run. Look at Dogecoin. Why is Phantom running? Obviously ahead of FVM. Optimism, L2s, Mina Protocols, ZK. So usually there's reasons why you have strong performers most of the time. Once you identify the strong performers, and obviously they're going to change day to day. So look for ones that are consistently strong, not just had one pump. Oh my God, XRP pumps. It's the XRP narrative. No. You look for the pump. You look for the open interest. And then you dig a bit deeper. You look at whether it's sustained. You go into Luna Crush. You look at social metrics. You look at other related coins in that ecosystem. Are they pumping as well? You try and mentally work out which narrative is getting retail mindshare. There's a process once you look at something that's pumped. The next step in that process is looking at open interest. So if you go to a website called Coinalyze, you can look, and thanks for Runner XBT for giving me this tip because it was fucking fantastic last week. He shared this website with me. It allows you to see the open interest change, so the total leverage position change of any altcoin in the market. This is going to show you where the market is most interested. So you can use this to find new alts, or you can use this to verify alts that have been performing well price-wise in terms of open interest and trading volume. And you can scroll through and see a few interesting ones as well. You've got Magic, which is one of the strongest projects on Arbitrum. It also has like a gaming narrative behind it. So that's probably running ahead of Arbitrum. You've got, I don't even know what 𝗖𝗍𝗍 is, but it could be an indicator for me to look further into it. Relatively low liquidity though, but decent compared to the others. You've got Gitcoin running. You've got CKB running, the Chinese coin that Crypto 𝗍𝗍 has been pumping on his Twitter. You've got obviously Stellar pumping. That's that ISO narrative again. Mina, ZK. So you can look through the open interest to find new projects, and you can also use it as another reference point to verify whether a project in terms of its 24-hour volume is also getting interest on a trading front. So it's a very powerful tool to work out new projects in the market that or at least ones that maybe you aren't aware were running, whether they have interest or not. So that is the next step after you find confluence across the previous indicators: ETH BTC, alt season, alt BTC pairs, USD pairs, BTC dominance. Then you're trying to pick strength. Don't pick weakness when you're trading alts. So if these indicators line up and you get into alts, don't pick weakness. Don't try and go for, let's say, 𝗧𝗧𝗏 or AVAX if they're not showing strength. If they do start showing strength, sure, if their open interest increases, if their price performing well, if there's a narrative that starts to brew, an announcement, something, yeah, you can trade strength, but don't trade a laggard for the sake of it. Don't be like, oh, let's trade 𝗧𝗧𝗏 because it's due. It hasn't run yet. That's kind of stupid, because in an alt season, in a true alt season, the strongest performers are the coins with the strongest narratives. They run the most. You make the most money there, and then the other ones still pump, but they only pump because everything else is pumping. They don't pump because there's a reason for them to pump. There's no fundamentals behind the pumps. You want to go for the things with fundamentals behind the pumps, because those things actually perform the strongest. Because let's say you're a retail participant, right? And you have Bitcoin in your wallet, and you put some into Ethereum because you were rotating. And then you make money on Ethereum, and then you want to rotate into altcoins. Where are you going to rotate? Are you going to rotate into some random coin that hasn't pumped yet? No. You're going to rotate. Think about how retail operates. You're going to rotate into a project which has media attention, which has mind share, which is being talked about on Twitter, which is hot. You're going to rotate into that. And everyone starts buying into that narrative as the price goes higher and higher and higher. And then you kind of get this FOMO euphoric blow off top for a lot of these narratives. So that's why those coins are the best to get into. And I'm not saying FOMO in. You want to wait for the indicators that I previously discussed to hit first, and you also want to wait for good entries. Don't be greedy with your entries. Don't just buy into huge candles, but try and buy projects into some sort of relative strength. And let's say you want to buy AI projects and Ocean's just ripped, and you don't want to buy Ocean. We'll just look further down the list. Look at some other AI projects that have similar fundamentals, similar open interest, similar traction, similar BTC pairs, and maybe get into that one because it hasn't run yet. That's fine to do, as long as you're underneath a stronger basket of assets and you're not just picking something that's completely irrelevant. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an indicator as to when to buy alts. I think if you put all of these steps together, you can benefit off what could be an altcoin season, an altcoin rotation. What am I personally doing? I'm waiting for FOMC. I'm going to give you guys an update, of course, when I start buying alts. But for me, I'm just waiting because, if we do get 50 bips or 25 bips in a hawkish Fed, likely we see a pullback, and then I can look at getting into alts. It'll be interesting to see what reacts worse if alts drop more. I think they will. But, there's a scenario where the Bitcoin dominance flips upon a dump as well. And then that's when the rotation starts to happen. It's an odd scenario, but it's interesting. Market dumps, you can get into alts, they bounce, and then those are the strongest performers. Let's see. Let's see. It's all just speculation, but that's the reason I'm not in now, because I don't particularly, to be honest, want to be holding some crazy leverage position 14 hours before one of the biggest Fed FOMCs of all time. So for the apers out there, you might have to wait a day, but it's okay. Like, this is your research time. This is literally, I just gave you the 5-step blueprint. This is your time to research these alts and come up with your game plan, right? And find some. If you go back and watch my previous shows, I have talked about a lot of them. I just don't want to be a broken record and talk about the same coins again and again and again. But if you watch my show 2 days ago and the day before, I talked about some. Like, I'm looking at some perp dexes. There are a few things that interest me there. Some of the Arbitrum stuff, super interesting. So there's a few things. Speaking of Arbitrum, by the way, 1 day and 12 hours to the airdrop. The biggest airdrop in crypto history, $1 billion. So let's say it's $1 per ARB. It could be $1.2 billion. It's absolutely insane. Now, I think it could be higher than $1 when it first launches, to be honest with you. I think, if you just base it based on optimism, it's worth $1.10. In the OTC groups I've been looking at, Arbitrum has been going for between $1.50 to $2. So I do see it launching somewhere in that region and actually going a lot higher. I'm assuming a lot of you got the airdrop because 4 months ago I did an airdrop tutorial on the channel. If you watched that, you would have qualified. And if you listened to the steps, if you missed it, as some of you may have, firstly, I'm sorry. It's kind of Sometimes it's tough. If you miss it, you miss it. There's going to be more opportunities in terms of new airdrops. I'll keep you updated on those. I'm actually posting a thread tomorrow on my Twitter, so follow me at 𝗲𝗍𝗍𝗃. But I think there's also an opportunity to trade Arbitrum. Now, the first caveat will be, if you are trading Arbitrum upon launch, be wary. It's going to be volatile. It's easy to get wrecked because there's going to be crazy wicks. So if you're using high leverage, you're probably going to get wrecked. Let's be honest. I would be tempted just to use spot, or if you have to use leverage, extremely low leverage on the Arbitrum launch if you're going to trade it, because it's going to be difficult to nail, especially if you're using high leverage. You can just get wicked out because these moves are crazy. But the general pattern for the last 3 major airdrops may indicate how to trade this Arbitrum airdrop. So let's quickly look at this, because I'm going to do a full video on this tomorrow and my full plan. But we can see that Optimism, Blur, and Aptos, all 3 of the latest 3 airdrops, had a pattern that they followed. They pumped upon launch. They sold off as airdrop recipients sold. You can see this red area here. So they pumped, then dumped. The pump was roughly a couple weeks, or even a few days in some cases. Then the dump was like 3 to 4 weeks, and then the pump was another 2 to 3 weeks. Then they had an explosive recovery once selling's exhausted. That's this blue chart here. Basically, in every single airdrop this has happened. Blur is the exception, that the pump wasn't great. It still did pump though. It went from 46 cents to 70 cents. So still almost 2x. It just didn't do the 4 to 5x that Aptos and Optimism did. So if you are going to trade Arbitrum and you didn't get an airdrop, or let's say you did get an airdrop and you want to know what to do with it, this could be a general guide. Now, look, I just want to say, if you are getting an airdrop, I think it's always wise to take profits. I wouldn't try, if you've made $5,000, $10,000, I wouldn't try and be too greedy. If that's life-changing money for you, or if that's a significant amount of money for you, like it probably is for most people, then, I would just take at least half off the table. I wouldn't bag hold percentage-wise any more than I'd be willing to allocate it to my personal portfolio. So if you would, just think about it. If you own no Arbitrum at all, how much percentage-wise would you allocate it to your portfolio? 2%? 3%? So make sure however much you sell is in line with how much you actually want to hold. Don't be greedy and hold because you think it's going to pump if it's like 50% of your portfolio. Because some people are genuinely going to get huge airdrops here. Like if you have 5,000 ARB tokens and it launches at $5, you made 25 grand. I'm even seeing people saying it could hit $10. The reason that could happen, and I don't think it will, but the reason it could theoretically is because upon launch, these airdrops tend to just explode, kind of do stupid things. Like, look at these first few days on Optimism, Aptos, and Blur. They absolutely moon, and they go crazy. Someone said 40 to 50 cents. It's too low. That's half the market cap of Optimism. I think it's possible during this period, this red zone, where you get the sell-off, that it may hit 40 cents at some point. But that will be significantly undervalued, and at that point, I'd be looking to long if it's 40 cents, and then wait for it to pump. Someone said, what's the Arbitrum IOU token? Let's have a look. Arbitrum IOU is 750. But this doesn't really mean much because OTCs have been around $1 to $1.50. So this is the playbook I'm showing. It's in the description of this video. There's a link to my Twitter. If you do like it, then give it a retweet, give it a like, share it with your friends. There's a weird argument behind TA, right? If everyone knows about it, does it happen or does it not happen? It's interesting because if everyone's looking at the same levels, then that actually validates the levels. But if everyone's looking at the same patterns, then it invalidates the patterns. So it's interesting to see if Arbitrum will follow this playbook, because it doesn't have to. It really doesn't. It's just the only real historical data points we have are these 3 tokens. So these are our best shots at trading the Arbitrum airdrop. And I will be trading it for a bit of fun. I won't be using crazy money. I'll mostly be using spot. Hopefully it gets a listing on Gains, because I think what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to get airdrop the ARB token, and they're going to trade on perp dexes. So I think G-Trade, GMX, Vela, all of these perp dexes could be beneficiaries trade volume wise. That's one potential flow and effect of Arbitrum. I also would like it on G-Trade just from a personal perspective, because I want to trade it and I want to do it on a DEX, because my airdrop's going to be on a DEX. So if we get a listing here or on GMX, I'll trade it. I think G-Trade as well are going to do an airdrop. So starting, not an airdrop, a trading comp / airdrop. So like basically they're going to be giving away incentives, ARB incentives to people that trade 1 week post launch. So if you aren't trading on G-Trade, I would at least get my wallet set up for that. Because if you're trading ARB, then you probably want to do it somewhere where you can get incentives. I know they're getting listings on Bybit as well, but if you do it on Gains, then you'll likely be able to benefit from this trade to earn program. Wait for details on that, but in the meantime, there's a link in the description to get set up with a G-Trade link, and yeah, you'll probably be able to win money through that incentives program. Let's see, but I do hope they get an ARB listing personally, just from a personal perspective. And to be honest, G-Trade's trading volume has been pretty much mooning for the last few months, so it's been extremely impressive. And the same thing for a lot of the other Arbitrum perp dexes. It's been extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. All right, let's answer some questions now. Let's dig in. Binance said they'd be trading it on launch. Yep. So we got a Binance announcement and we got a Bybit announcement as well. Obviously, if you want to trade it on Bybit, it will be there when it first launches. So there's a link in the description for a $30,000 sign-up bonus. You can trade it on Bybit. Yo, what's up, Brandon? Some low cap ARB perps too. Not going to share those yet. Yeah, there are some tokens in the Arbitrum ecosystem which are extremely compelling. The only thing I'm wary of is, the pre-Arbitrum run-up resulting in maybe a buy the rumor, sell the news type event, which I'm wary of. So I'm just being careful to not ape in. But the Arbitrum ecosystem has some good tokens. I do have exposure, by the way. So I've got GNS exposure, full disclosure. That rhymed. So yeah, GMX I don't hold, but that's a decent, safe one. Look, you've also got Magic. I think this is a good one. I actually think out of all of them, this might be undervalued compared to the rest. It's going to move with the market though, so it won't outperform if the market drops post FOMC. I'd wait for FOMC, right, before you get into any Arbitrum tokens, that's for sure. But this is one I'm looking at. What else in the Arbitrum ecosystem is interesting? Joe's been killing it. They're incredible. 𝗕𝗍𝗄𝗽, kind of like a very... 𝗕𝗍𝗄𝗽 I prefer, I think. Kind of a very easy bet for exposure, but I don't think that'll outperform. You've got Grail been pumping, which is Camelot. I wouldn't buy into a 96% pump. Radiant actually come down a bit over the last day. This one is a decent one. I think they're also getting ARB incentives. So if we keep getting a big pullback on Radiant, probably to this 27-cent level, I'd look at it. Someone said, how's Nested going? I did speak about this a couple of weeks ago, but we stopped doing Nested. The portfolio is, I believe, in profit. So if you want to withdraw, you can withdraw. But we ended our partnership with them. And now we kind of just went our separate ways. Some issues with the platform. I think the ones that used it maybe experienced them, but portfolio wise, it's still pretty strong. It's mostly in stables to kind of protect against that, but we're no longer running the nested portfolios. Someone said best show on Banter. Thank you, bro. Thank you. Appreciate it. I put a lot of effort in trying to get the alpha the best education. So I appreciate the support. Someone said, is it too late to get the Arbitrum airdrop? It is too late. It is too late. But as I said, you can trade it, or if you want to look for the next airdrop, you can follow me on Twitter. Link in the description to my Twitter. I'm going to be doing an Arbitrum kind of follow-up airdrop thread. So on Layer 0, ZK Sync, some of the ones that are coming soon, that could be the next Arbitrum. I did an airdrop thread 2 months ago, which kind of gave you an indication as to the next ones I was looking at. But I want to do an updated one with new projects, better guides, just like a fully fledged one. So link in the description to my Twitter if you want to give me a follow. And while you're at it, retweet this ARB airdrop post. And yeah, I'll be updating you guys on that. You like me more than Ran. Thank you. I mean, I'm sure Ran would hate to hear that. But maybe he likes to hear it. I don't know. Maybe it'll push him. Who knows? He's very competitive. If the day my show gets more views than Ran, I think I'll be hearing about it, which is a good thing. He's always wanting to one up. Thank you, Simran. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the show. IMX. You know what's interesting about IMX? I know you're not talking about the token itself. You're talking about the airdrop. But and yeah, you can stake IMX and earn rewards. They had a very interesting Polygon announcement. It was basically a collaborative partnership to launch a chain on Polygon. Very ill received because they were hyping this announcement up for weeks on their Twitter. Hype. And everyone was hyped behind this IMX announcement. And then it announced, and it was really them partnering with their main competitors. So a lot of community members really kind of, really in disbelief over this announcement. Not too happy with it. So personally, I'm not an IMX holder, but I think as a proxy bet, IMX is probably, one of the best top 3 gaming bets right now. We don't know what end game winner the market's going to pick in the gaming space. But if we had to bet right now on the best gaming proxies, I'd say obviously Matic's one, but IMX for sure is one. So hope this keeps dipping. Hope bag holders keep selling because I might pick some up. But obviously long-term portfolio wise, I'm not accumulating long-term spot right now. So that's just not really my strategy. More looking at trades. IMX can perform very well in the bull run, and it can 20x, but it won't probably 20x from $1.25. It'll probably 20x from much lower. And I think a lot of alts still have a major pullback at some point this year. Happen to be wrong, of course, because all of us prefer a bullish market, but I am pretty, well capital preserved. I have a lot of stables, still cash, just, on the sidelines. There's a lot happening in the macro environment, and I don't think now is like the optimal time to just ape into altcoins for the next 3 years. I think it's better to be pragmatic, follow a DCA approach, but also, keep some decent stables on the side. You don't know what's going to happen. There's fears of a recession, collapse, like all sorts of stuff. Important not to get too swept up in market emotion, I think. So definitely keep holding that 20 to 30 plus. I think right now I'm even 40% stable coin balance strong. And yeah, I recently consolidated a lot of my alts. A lot of them had pumped. Consolidated a lot back into stables, and I'll look to redeploy into hot narratives. I'm a narrative chaser. Miles always coming through with the alpha. Appreciate it, bro. So tomorrow, I've got to go now, but tomorrow I'll be doing a Arbitrum airdrop guide. So I kind of gave you a taste today of how I would trade the Arbitrum airdrop. I'm going to give you a much more in-depth guide and look at scenarios, price levels, price targets, etc. That'll be, in tomorrow's show in 24 hours. And then on Friday, I have a special guest joining me to do some charts. That is how the rest of the week looks. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, smash the like button. Remember, all the links to the stuff I talked about in the description. My Twitter, if you want to stay tuned for that airdrop thread. Also, you've got Apex for Bitcoin trading, and obviously Buy Bitbit. Everything's in the description if you want to trade. I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a very nice day. Peace out.